Welcome back to the Right Take Report. Today we're asking a big question. Do college students actually agree with free speech, or does what they say in the following interviews contradict this? Let's take a trip down memory lane, given that the video I'm going over is about 9 years old. Almost a decade later, some of the things sound eerily the same. We're going to get into these actions of the people, and we're always going to talk about the best opinion on the topic. Sorry for the terrible meme in terms of quality, but I liked it, and let's get right into the video.
Occidental College in California is considering instituting a system for students to report so-called microaggressions perpetrated against them on campus. Microaggressions are statements that intentionally or unintentionally send a negative message related to someone's membership in a marginalized group. We visited campus to ask Occidental students if they agree that the following statements could be considered microaggressions. They've all been documented as such on a college campus somewhere in the United States. Have you heard of the term microaggression?
Yeah, that's a big thing on campus. If we see large-scale violence, we can name that as a macroaggression. But the way that we devalue that violence, the way that we silence that violence, that's a microaggression.
I'm asking an Asian American, where were you born?
Yes.
Very, very contextual, you know?
That's not a microaggression. That's just asking where they were born.
Telling a black student that he or she is very articulate.
That is, yeah. Yes.
What about saying all lives matter?
I think because the history behind Black Lives Matter, it's kind of like appropriating a statement that was created specifically to talk about Black lives being lost to police brutality. So that is.
I'm colorblind. I don't see race.
Possibly.
I believe the most qualified person should get the job.
Qualifications aren't really the only thing you should consider when hiring someone.
If you're saying that the most qualified person is someone who is not a minority or not of a religion you believe in, then yes, that'd be a microaggression.
Saying God bless you after somebody sneezes.
Oh, that would be a microaggression because of different religions. Yeah, it could be a microaggression to someone who doesn't believe in God.
I think that the harm there is relatively minimal.
So there's still some harm, though.
I would say there's not harm, but if it's being asked, clearly someone found.
Maybe mini microaggression.
Perhaps.
Do you see any downside to creating a database full of statements that faculty and students make to each other in terms of protecting free speech values on campus?
Not in terms of protecting free speech value, but the idea of a database certainly raises eyebrows.
So yes, we do need a system where we can report our experiences, and that like a system of education or whatever.
I would say it's good to have it in place, but to have like harsh actions against it, it wouldn't be beneficial to student life here.
It'll make a safer environment.
Just a quick reminder, this video is from 9 years ago, and it kind of sounds like how people talk in 2025. But hopefully some of the views have shifted since then, since pretty much everything is considered a microaggression. Even asking where someone is born is a microaggression. Or saying you don't see race, microaggression. Or saying God bless you, microaggression. But even back then, we were seeing this nonsense that plays out today. And saying all lives matter or something along those lines should be seen as supporting any type of BLM cause because it recognizes the value of all human life. Yet somehow people can twist it back into an attack. And what I really think is going on here is these college students in these interviews just want to sound like they're correct. They want to sound like they're on the right side of history and on the right side of this debate. But what we're seeing now is just complete and utter nonsense. Nobody's casting shade or alienating anybody through microaggressions. And then we get the ridiculous kind of claim that qualifications shouldn't matter in hiring by this one student. What should matter? I am curious. If it's not qualifications, what is it? Race, gender, sexual orientation, what is it? If not merit, then what can it be? Because according to these students, it's definitely not who's most qualified for the job because qualifications don't matter. And now apparently saying, God bless you after a sneeze is a microaggression. As I had stated before, it's just so ridiculous I had to address it again. Let's just take a second and imagine an America where all this doesn't exist and how far we could get.
environment. So I fully support the council, and I think it's really great that the faculty is taking this initiative because it wasn't one of the demands. The faculty on their own said, like, we're going to do this because we believe it's what we should be doing.
They went above and beyond to police hate speech.
I think so in some respects.
Protests are erupting on college campuses across the country as students demand that administrators address racial grievances through mandatory sensitivity training courses, hiring of more diverse faculty members, and the resignation of insufficiently responsive college presidents.
Change comes from listening, learning, caring.
Video captured at Yale University show a student shouting down a professor trying to engage her in conversation about the role of faculty in regulating students' Halloween costumes.
It is not about creating an intellectual space. It is not.
This professor's wife, also a faculty member, later resigned from Yale, saying, "The current climate at Yale is not, in my view, conducive to civil dialogue and open inquiry." Another clip out of the University of Missouri shows students and at least one professor pushing journalists out of their self-styled safe space.
You're pushing me.
You need to get out. You need to get out.
No, I don't.
While these protesters are clearly exercising their First Amendment rights, images such as these have led more and more observers to wonder whether or not college students care about the free speech rights of others.
This is a great point because even almost 10 years later, the same stuff is going on. Only certain people can express their freedom of speech and their First Amendment right. But watching something like this is quite eye-opening because it reminds me of what we're seeing now with, for example, the Palestine protests. Plenty of students jump into these protests because they think they're on the right side of history, but in reality, most of them have no clue what they're fighting for. And I can document this through plenty of videos of people who are protesting and do not know what they're protesting for. It's the same type of students who are physically pushing reporters off of campus, as we can see here, and pushing teachers and fighting back without knowing exactly what they're protesting for. In 2025, we can see these encampments all over college campuses for so-called Free Palestine protests, which half the people don't even know what they're protesting for, as I've said maybe 5 or 6 times at this point. And once again, most of these people are just virtue signaling. It is utterly ridiculous. They have no grasp on history, any of the conflict that is going on, and they don't even know what they're protesting about. They just want to feel good and be in college and think they're doing the right thing. It's ridiculous, and it's crazy how this is actually being reported in modern society.
What are your thoughts on the concept of free speech? Do you support free speech?
Yes, I do support free speech. And Oxy is an environment that also supports differing opinions.
Free speech allows you to have new input constantly, and I think that's like a really big part of the community here at Oxy.
Obama has actually encouraged this, saying that instead of college students being coddled, they should have these active discussions so that they can learn something new and change their viewpoints a little bit.
Too much censorship would give a lot of power to few individuals, and I believe in a more even distribution of power.
I think that everyone should be able to say what they believe and what's on their mind.
Most of the students we spoke with seemed to defend free speech in principle, if not always in practice. But one organizer of the previous week's protests viewed even the concept of free speech with deep suspicion.
Those using the rhetoric of free speech are individuals who already are in positions of power, who are creating history, who are creating these dominant narratives. Free speech conceptually is about this idea of equality, that everyone can have the right to say something, but that's not the way our society works. That's not the way this college campuses work. We only hear the same reiteration of particular voices over and over again, and that's white students' voices. That's President Veach's voice.
A recent Pew poll found that 95% of Americans believe citizens should have the right to criticize government policies publicly. But the numbers weaken when you start talking about offensive speech. 40% of millennials polled believe that the government should be able to prevent people from making statements that are offensive to minority groups, for instance.
If it's a racist remark or something that tries to stir up the public, I think that should be stopped.
I think if the speech involves a threat or involves violence of any type, then that should not be allowed. But other than that, I don't think there should be a regulation on that.
Personally, I think that if you ever say someone, I hate you because you're so-and-so, that should not be allowed. In a way, it's free speech, but in a way, again, it's a hate crime. If you're saying you're a lesser person because you're a Muslim, Jewish, Christian, Catholic, any of the above, that's not okay, and that's a hate crime.
That's the other thing about free speech. When I say that it's about power and privilege, it only enables things like hate speech, because it makes it seem that everything that we say has equal weight, when that's not true.
Don't want to single out Donald Trump, but his approach to this political campaign, saying we should monitor the mosques, we should build this wall and keep out all the Mexicans because they bring their gangs, they bring all their crime. That kind of speech is really hurtful to those people for no reason, just because he wants to get his views across. And
So really Donald Trump shouldn't be allowed to say those things?
Personally, I wouldn't say so, just because, like a lot of other people, I don't really think that he has the capabilities of being a president.
What kind of repercussions would you like to see for hate speech violations?
I haven't really thought about that, to be honest. I think that in no way should we send someone to prison for that, but I think that there should be protection of people who are being attacked.
What we say in terms of hate speech has incredible weight, right? Because it's intimately linked to violence against people of color. It's intimately linked to the prison industrial complex.
Do you think free speech is valued on this campus?
Yeah, I think it is.
You feel that free speech is alive and well on the campus of Occidental?
Yes.
The only thing that I do know now is that we're in a position where you can't ignore what's going on this campus. And that's kind of the bottom line. So students have been turning a blind eye for a while now. Whether or not they're using a justification of free speech, that's on them.
If I were to sneeze and you said, "God bless you" to me, could that be a microaggression?
I want to say no, but at the same time, I guess it would count.
At the end of the day, open discussion is the best policy. So I really do like these interviews, even though the mic is weirdly long. The students who supposedly support free speech actually don't, if it's talking about the wrong group of people, which is not free speech in a sense. They claim to be defending free speech until someone speaks against what they believe in. And then the hypocrisy is unreal. They live and die on the hill of hate speech, which other countries have implemented, but not nearly as well and as fruitful as somebody like the United States, who doesn't recognize hate speech in terms of people talking against things they don't believe in. However, especially with Donald Trump and his supporters, free speech is free speech. You either support it for everyone or you don't support it at all. But for these students, it's quite clear they only want speech that benefits them, and they want to imprison or fine or hate on people who disagree with them. Thank you so much for the video. Would love some constructive feedback in the comments, and can't wait to see you in the next one.